Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy. Here we share new confessions every day.
There's a particular kind of pain reserved for parents, the quiet agony of giving your entire life to someone who eventually decides you're no longer worth showing up for. They don't teach you this part of parenthood. They teach you about first steps, scraped knees, sleepless nights. They don't prepare you for the slow, cold erosion. When your child grows up and quietly begins removing you from their life. Piece by piece. Until you are no longer essential. No longer wanted. Until you are just, optional. I am Celeste Whitmore. I'm 49 years old. And I was my son's entire world. Until I wasn't. I built my life around him, Asher. I worked overtime, skipped vacations, passed on buying a home because I thought college savings were more important. I was there for every game, every broken heart, every late-night phone call. I poured myself into him, certain that love like that would always matter. I thought there was some kind of unspoken contract between parent and child. That if you loved them hard enough, gave enough, they'd never forget you. But people forget. The ones closest to you forget first. When Asher told me he was getting married, I thought maybe life was circling back to me. That I would finally get to stand beside him on one of the biggest days of his life. He called me on a brisk January morning. His voice was buzzing, full of nervous excitement. He told me all about Harper, his fiancée, how they'd met in San Francisco, how they wanted a wedding in Paris, something magical and intimate. I was thrilled for him. For them. I remember saying, almost immediately, I want to help. I'll cover the wedding. He hesitated, just for a second. Mom, you don't have to. But I interrupted, heart swelling. No, I want to. Let me give you this. Because that's what parents do, isn't it? I sent the first payment the next day. Venue, a private rooftop overlooking the Seine. Florist, specializing in rare orchids, Harper's favorite. Catering, Michelin-starred. Photographer. Planner. Custom decorations flown in from Italy. Every time a new invoice came, I paid it. Without question. Without delay. I thought it was love in action. Pierce, my ex-husband, called me foolish. Said Asher was taking advantage. Said Harper was never warm to me. I brushed him off. You've always been cynical. This is what parents do. But I should have listened. Maybe he saw something I didn't want to see. The planning went on for months. I was never directly involved. Harper wanted full control, but I kept getting payment requests. I didn't care about the details. I cared about standing there, watching my son begin his forever. I started dreaming about the trip. About Paris in spring. I even looked at dresses, trying to find something elegant but not overdone. I imagined the moment he'd see me in the crowd and smile. Because his mother was there. Of course I would be there. How could I not be? And then, one afternoon, in the middle of an otherwise ordinary Tuesday, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Asher. No phone call. No explanation. Just this. Hey, Mom. So Harper and I talked. The guest list is super tight. We're keeping it really small. Just friends, mostly. But don't worry, we'll send you photos. I remember reading it 3 times. Because it didn't make sense. Because it couldn't mean what it clearly meant. I called him immediately. He didn't answer. I texted him, Asher, are you serious? You're telling me I'm not invited? The response came quickly. It's not personal, Mom. It's just the vibe we're going for. Super intimate. Please don't be upset. You'll still see all the photos. Not personal. He said it like he was canceling a dinner reservation. Like I was just some distant relative who wouldn't quite fit in the frame. I sat there for hours. Staring at that screen. The worst part wasn't the exclusion. It was the casualness of it. The way he delivered the cut like it was no big deal. As if my place in his life was negotiable. Expendable. And then, somewhere inside all that grief, I felt something else rise up. Something steady. Something cold. A thought I'd never allowed myself to finish before. Maybe my son isn't the person I believed he was. And maybe I'm done pretending otherwise. I didn't cry. Not right away. I thought I would, I even waited for the tears to come. But instead, there was this, quiet. An eerie, almost surgical kind of quiet that settled inside me, like the flick of a switch. When your child cuts you out like that, so effortlessly, something inside you snaps. It's not loud, not dramatic. It's just a click. A realization. I sat at my kitchen table in my Portland townhouse, staring out at the soft drizzle that had become the city's constant background noise. I picked up my phone, reread Asher's text, and typed back. Understood. Thank you for letting me know. Simple. Measured. Because sometimes, silence is louder than begging. I didn't call him again. I didn't text. I didn't argue or plead for a place at his table. I just sat in that decision. And then I opened my laptop. I pulled up the emails. Hundreds of them. Contracts. Payment confirmations. Invoices. Schedules. Contacts. You see, Harper had managed most of the planning, but the financial trail? That ran through me. My name was on every wire transfer. I had set it up that way, mostly out of habit, because I was the one paying for everything. I didn't act out of rage. There was no screaming, no shaking hands. It was calm. Surgical. Precise. I called the venue first. It was a small boutique location in the Murray district, with a stunning rooftop garden overlooking the Seine. I spoke with the manager, Lucille, who remembered me instantly. Ms. Whitmore, is everything all right? Yes, I said softly. I just need to cancel the remaining balance. According to the contract, full payment is due the day before the event. Since it's not yet paid in full, I'd like to retract the pending transfer. There was a long pause. Of course, ma'am. I'll cancel it immediately. Next, the florist. Then the caterer. Then the string quartet Harper had insisted on. Each call was easier than the last. Each cancellation perfectly within the terms. They had structured their contracts around staggered payments, with final amounts due 24 hours before the event. I had planned to make those payments later that week. But now? Now I wouldn't. By the time I closed my laptop, tens of thousands of dollars had quietly slipped back into my account. The wedding, as they had planned it, was gone. I knew it wouldn't collapse entirely. Harper's parents had money, not like I did, but enough. They'd patched together something last minute. But it wouldn't be my wedding anymore. It wouldn't be the one I built for them. It would be something less. And that was enough. The next morning, my phone started buzzing. At first, texts. Mom, did you cancel the payments? What's going on? Then calls. Voicemail after voicemail. By noon, his tone had shifted from confusion to rage. You've ruined everything. How could you be so petty? You're embarrassing me in front of everyone. I didn't pick up. I didn't write back. I let him burn himself out, thrashing in his own entitlement. I went to the farmer's market. I bought fresh tulips. I walked to my favorite coffee shop on Hawthorne and sat there, reading a book, listening to the rain. It was the first peaceful day I'd had in years. And as I sipped my latte, my phone kept buzzing in my pocket. And I realized something beautiful. I didn't owe him an answer. Not anymore. I expected the calls to stop after a day. Maybe two. But Asher kept trying. Voicemails, text messages, even long, frantic emails with subject lines like, please, just talk to me, and, you don't understand what you've done. But I did. I understood it perfectly. I understood that for years I had been feeding a version of love that wasn't being returned. I was the safety net, the bank, the silent supporter in the wings while he played the lead. And when it came time for the big scene, the wedding, the life milestone, he decided I didn't belong in the shot. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even sad anymore. There was just this steady pulse of clarity. I wasn't going to be an accessory in his curated life. 3 days after I pulled the payments, I got a call from Harper. I didn't recognize the number, but something told me to answer. Celeste, hi, it's Harper. Her voice was tight, her usual sugary tone gone. I just wanted to say that I think you're overreacting. We still wanted to share the day with you. That's why we said we'd send photos. We thought you'd be happy to see them. Photos. The word landed like a slap. They thought a handful of digital images would be enough for me. Enough to replace my presence. Enough to quiet whatever disappointment they assumed I'd feel. I didn't interrupt her. I let her finish her carefully rehearsed monologue. When she was done, I said, Harper, weddings are about family. They're about honoring the people who built you. If I was just a checkbook to you, that's fine. But don't send me pictures of a wedding you didn't think I was worthy to attend. Silence. I ended the call. That was the last time I spoke to her. The wedding still happened, but not as they planned. The rooftop venue was cancelled. The 5-star caterer? Gone. The orchestra? Replaced with a playlist and a speaker system. They scrambled, of course. Harper's parents stepped in to save what they could. I imagine it was still a beautiful day in some stripped-down way. But I also know it wasn't the wedding. It wasn't the wedding I had built. A mutual friend later told me they held it at a smaller restaurant outside the city. No rooftop. No orchids. No luxury photographer. I was told the cake arrived late and that it rained. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. Because this wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about destroying their day. It was about reclaiming something I had forgotten I was allowed to protect. My dignity. The most fascinating part? They never sent the photos. Not a single one. The same images they thought would be enough for me, the ones they reduced me to, they didn't even bother to share. And I realized, they never intended to. I wasn't part of their story anymore. But the difference now was that I no longer wanted to be. You would think losing your only child, losing him while he's still alive, would hollow you out. You would expect the silence to feel unbearable. But what no one tells you is that sometimes the silence is what saves you. After the wedding, Asher's attempts to contact me tapered off. The texts slowed, the voicemails became less frantic, more resigned. Eventually, he stopped calling altogether. And you know what? I didn't chase him. For the first time in my life, I didn't run after him with open arms, desperate to patch things up, desperate to prove I was still worthy of his attention. I let the space between us stay empty. And day by day, I started filling that space with things that belonged to me. I went back to things I had abandoned long ago. I started taking morning walks again through Laurelhurst Park, breathing in the smell of wet leaves and pine, something I had forgotten I loved. I signed up for pottery classes downtown. I was terrible at it, but the feeling of my own hands shaping something, anything, was a kind of quiet rebellion against all the years I had spent shaping someone else's life. I reconnected with people I had pushed aside. Friends like Isla and Marin, women I used to meet for wine nights before my life became a revolving door of Asher's emergencies, his late-night phone calls, his endless needing. Isla invited me to join her weekend hiking group. Marin introduced me to new clients for consulting work. Slowly, I built something that didn't orbit around Asher. Something that belonged to me. One evening, over dinner at a small Italian restaurant in the Pearl District, Marin looked at me and said, "You're lighter now, you know that? Like something finally let go of you." I smiled. Yeah, I said. Or maybe I finally let go of it. The grief didn't disappear. It shifted. It stopped being the sharp ache of being unwanted. It became something else. A scar I could live with. Sometimes, I would wonder if Asher felt the weight of what he'd done. If the silence ever got loud for him. But I didn't reach out to find out. I didn't need to. For the first time in decades, my life was not waiting on his next call. I wasn't waiting to be chosen. And maybe that's the cruelest freedom. When you finally stop hoping they'll come back. It was almost a year before I heard from him again. One afternoon, as I was leaving a client meeting in downtown Portland, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I had stopped answering unknown numbers since the wedding. But this time, something told me to pick up. Mom? His voice was hesitant, almost careful, like he wasn't sure if he was still allowed to call me that. I paused for a breath, steady. Asher. There was a long silence, the weight of it pressing between us like a closed door. Listen, I just wanted to say. I've been thinking about what happened. About the wedding. I guess I didn't really handle things right. His words were flat, mechanical. The kind of apology people give when they aren't sorry, just uncomfortable. I waited, curious to see where this was going. Harper's pregnant, he blurted out, as if he needed to shift the weight onto something else. We're having a baby. I thought you'd want to know. I felt nothing. Not the joy I expected. Not even anger. Just a distant kind of numb. I could almost hear the subtext vibrating beneath his words. We need you again. We want something again. Because isn't that always the rhythm with people like him? They forget you. They discard you. And when they need you, they come knocking like nothing happened. That's big news, I said calmly. Congratulations. He was waiting for me to ask when the baby was due. Waiting for me to offer help. Money. Support. I didn't. Instead, I said, you never sent me those photos. There was a beat. Yeah. I figured you didn't want them. I smiled to myself. You were right. I could tell he wanted to pivot, to ask for something, but I wasn't going to give him the space to do it. I wish you and Harper all the best with the baby, I said, my voice steady, warm but final. But I'm doing really well now. I've been focusing on the people who actually want me around. The line went quiet. I could feel the weight of it landing on him. I guess I'll let you go then. Yeah, I said softly. You will. And I hung up. That's the thing about people who take you for granted. They expect you to always leave the door unlocked. But sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do is not slam the door in their face. It's simply choosing to lock it. After that last call, I thought I'd feel something. Maybe guilt. Maybe a sting of regret. But there was only quiet. The good kind. The kind that fills your lungs when you realize you're finally breathing for yourself. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not Isla. Not Marin. I let the moment settle in me like warm tea. It was over. I had closed the loop. I had nothing else to give Asher. And more importantly, I didn't want to. Instead, I started building the life I had always postponed. I traveled to Barcelona in the spring. Alone. No itinerary, no agenda to follow for someone else's comfort. I walked the streets without thinking about what Asher might need from me or if my phone would ring in the middle of a meal. I sat in a little cafe near Placa Rail, sketching in a notebook I bought from a street vendor. I didn't realize until then how much of my life had been spent waiting for his approval, his affection, waiting to be included. I wasn't waiting anymore. I was living. On my terms. Back in Portland, I started my own consulting firm. I worked with women rebuilding their careers after divorce, after loss, after years of putting themselves second. Women like me. I called it second bloom because that's what I had become, a second bloom, something beautiful that grew after the first life wilted away. Isla and I started hosting Sunday dinners. The kind of gatherings I always dreamed of, long wooden tables, wine flowing, people laughing. Real friends. Chosen family. People who didn't just want a piece of me when it was convenient. People who saw me. It's funny, I had spent years believing motherhood was supposed to be the centerpiece of my life. That Asher was the sun and I was meant to orbit around him. But now I realize something. I was the sun all along. I thought I would always miss him. And yes, sometimes, when the rain taps against the windows, I think about the boy I raised. The one who used to hold my hand too tight when he was little. The one who used to fall asleep on my shoulder. But the man he became, the one who could so easily erase me from his wedding. I don't miss him. The grief has been replaced by something sharper, something steadier. Respect for myself. And as the months passed, I stopped checking my phone for him. Stopped wondering if maybe this time, he would reach out for something other than what I could give him. I didn't wait to be invited back into his life. Because now, I was too busy building mine. It's been 3 years now. 3 years since the wedding I never attended. 3 years since I stopped being the mother who was always on standby. You know what's strange? The ache fades. You think it won't. You think it'll sit with you forever like some permanent fracture. But one day, you wake up and realize it doesn't hurt anymore. It's just part of the story. The last I heard, Asher and Harper moved to Chicago. They have a daughter now. I saw it on social media through a mutual friend. Her name is Camille. I didn't reach out. I didn't send gifts. Because I know how this works now. They only call when they need something. And I've become a woman who knows the difference between being needed and being valued. There's a quiet power in choosing yourself. Not loudly. Not with grand gestures. But in those small, steady decisions, where you spend your time, who you open your door to, where your energy is welcome. People often talk about forgiveness like it's a requirement. But what they don't tell you is this. You don't owe anyone access to you. Forgiveness is not the same as permission. I can wish Asher well, but that doesn't mean he belongs in my life. I've built a beautiful life now. One where I laugh without the tightness in my chest. One where I don't rehearse conversations in my head to make someone love me better. Isla and I started traveling together, small weekend trips at first, then longer ones. We hiked through Banff in the fall, walked along the quiet beaches of Cannon Beach in winter. Marin and I turned Second Bloom into something bigger than we imagined. Women from across the country reached out, telling me our work gave them permission to choose themselves. Women like me. Women who forgot they mattered. Sometimes, new friends ask if I have children. And I tell them the truth. I say, I had a son. But I don't know him anymore. And I say it with peace. Not bitterness. Not grief. Just the kind of clarity that settles into your bones when you finally stop chasing people who never truly saw you. Because life is too short to beg for a seat at someone else's table. I've built my own now. And everyone sitting here knows my worth. And most importantly, so do I.